Hello, everybody. This is Paul Johnson from Escalate Research, and this is your play on moving forward with a PIP, a performance improvement plan. Now, this is a significant escalation in terms of the relationship with the employee. So, we always want to pump the brakes a little bit here and really think carefully about it. Uh, but it is an important step, and it is important that you not be afraid of taking this step because what's going to happen with the PIP is a lot of times it'll just bring issues to a head. And like I've been saying in previous plays, you can often get an early exit without having to go to something like frankly, a forced, firing of the employee. A lot of times, the PIP itself takes care of the problem. Another common question I get before I get into the details of this play is, well, what if the issue is more of a culture fit, right? What if I can't address it by kind of directly pinning it on a performance, a quantified performance aspect? Well, look, this goes back way back to when we did our first play, when we did that diagnosis, right? And if the issue is really a preference fit, I'm going to repeat this now in this play because it's worth restating, which is you really should have that heart to heart with the employee. What I mean by that is if you've tried different fits, different roles for this person, and they're just fundamentally misaligned with what the company's mission is, what the team is doing, and they're coming in really, really frustrated, I strongly recommend you just sit down and say, look, Bob, I've noticed you've been frustrated coming into work, and even though you've been in different roles. Let's talk through that. I mean, if you haven't done that, it's not something we cover explicitly in this playbook, but it's very important you do that. I can tell you one personal story that is exactly what I did with one person that I managed. And I simply told him one day, I'm like, it seems to me that you're quite frustrated. And look, I'm not asking you to come into work and be super happy about everything that happens. But if you're constantly frustrated, we have to talk about that because that's not a long-term recipe for success if you're frustrated. And that employee decided a few days later to quit. Not because of anything that I did, just because I made him realize, frankly, that I had put my finger on something that had been really he'd been keeping down low, and he actually called me the week after and said, "Thank you for just putting your finger on that and mentioning it. I hadn't realized how bad it had become." And yeah, there was just fundamental a mismatch between what I wanted to do and what the company was doing. Okay, so situations like that are difficult to address with like a specific performance improvement program, right? Because it's very difficult to write a performance improvement plan that says be less frustrated. Okay, but almost anything else you can write an improvement plan. Even soft behaviors, right? It's not just about like the ones that are straightforward or people that are late or not getting work done. Those are very attackable. But really things like being on time, communication skills, those things can be addressed with PIPs. So let's talk about this thing called a PIP. A PIP is a performance improvement plan, and it's really it involves three major parts. Yeah, all it's going to do, it's really quite simple. It's going to be a list of goals. It's going to be a set of consequences if those goals aren't met. In this case, termination of the employee. And then there's going to be a thing on mechanics. What is the support system around this employee? And speaking of support systems, this is an important time to bring in HR. You have to bring HR into this point of the conversation because we're talking about termination. There are various legal and other implications involved. So you want to involve HR. But really, it's very, very common and actually normal for the engineering team to really lead the authoring of the PIP and the presentation of the PIP with HR at your side. That's the typical setup. So again, back to this PIP structure. Those goals that you write, make sure they're SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable. Okay, so achievable is interesting. Achievable should be not necessarily achievable for this individual, but achievable for a person at this title with this level of experience. Okay, that's the bar. You're not lowering the bar for this person. That's important. Of course, relevant is the R, and then time-based. Okay, there has to be a deadline. That's it. Typical PIPs that I've seen are a 1 to 2 month range. I don't think you want to go to 3 to 6 months. That becomes very long. You want something short where they can show improvement and then take action from there. What I would do when I present this to the employee, same rules apply we've talked about in other plays. Get yourself in a calm state of mind. You want to deliver this document in a factual and neutral manner. And then, importantly in this step, give the employee a day to think about it. Okay? Say, look, here's the PIP. Read it, internalize it, come back to me tomorrow. And that's why this meeting is best to be done, a little bit later in the day, frankly, right? Because they're not going to get a full day's work in. Late in the afternoon, give them the PIP, say, go home, sleep on this. The consequences there are serious, right? Come back the next morning with questions. And then the next morning is where you can really have the substantive conversation, okay? And a lot of times what happens is after being presented a PIP, people leave because they read it, they internalize it, and they realize that they're not willing to do it, frankly, okay? That's not a bad thing, okay? What you're doing with the PIP is putting in black and white terms what the expectation is. Where this is hard is if you haven't done the plays that precede this. If you haven't done the feedback, then you're just hitting them. It's a total blind, and it's a blind hit to show up somebody with a PIP. That's why you want to be doing all those performance things we talked about in those previous plays. So you take that PIP and then come back on the next play. We'll talk about how to execute.